booties for black girl nerds.
Stanley, it is so good to see you and talk to you about this project. I've been looking forward to this.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to this interview as
Oh, I can't hear you. Cut out just a little
well.
bit.
Oh, can you? I tend to mumble, so maybe I should talk louder. Does this work?
No, that's perfect. I can hear you perfect
Yeah,
now. Well,
yeah,
thank you for this film. It was very moving. It was very interesting, and I loved the method of how you told the story. It was almost like when you look at a map and you can see one pinpoint, and as you pull the map out, you see how the web and how perspectives change between Tunde, between the other characters in the film. And I wanted to start with that. Why did you think that was the best method for telling the story and allowing the audience to see these different perspectives from the other characters?
I think it's twofold. I think first, the nature of violence against black bodies in this country is cyclical and is a time loop. When I first came, I grew up in all over Africa my whole life. So I only came to the States 5.5 years ago for college. So it was the first time that I was interacting with one, that I was a minority, and two, that I was interacting with systemic racism. So it really troubled me to see people that look like me die every day, um, on the news and in general. So the time loop was simply just an obvious convention to me. It was like, this is actually what's happening. This is not a metaphor. This is real. So that's one. In terms of how we treated time, as that map, it came down to, there's this like white bias when it comes down to black people being slain, where it's about choices. Well, if this person had just done this and not been there and do this, and it's cultural gaslighting is what it is. And for me, doing, rendering it in terms of like choices in space where the outcome is the same,
Mhm.
is an inherent argument against this structure, this idea that if a black person does something differently or acts differently, that things will change for them. Um, so I think that, and then third, actually, I said twofold, but third, it's that I understand that without genre convention to hold on to,
Mhm.
oftentimes a non-black person will have trouble actually interacting with such new content. So, like by providing a familiar thing for an outside perspective to look in, it just gives them grounding so that I can take them to that place easier,
Mhm.
more easily. Yeah.
What was pleasing about it is it allowed for so much more nuance, so much more conversation, because people still think of perspectives as so alien. But now to see what Tunde was experiencing versus what Soren was experiencing, from one way, you could look at it like, especially with regards to their relationship, that Tunde had a singular purpose,
Mhm.
that he wanted to live in his truth and
Mhm.
he wanted to be happy and he wanted to to find that happiness. Soren, on the other hand, didn't have a singular purpose that way. He still had sports to consider and other appearances to consider. Is that a fair assessment that although Tunde is experiencing racism, racial profiling, and all of these things en route to his demise, that his purpose is still very singular compared to his other
Yeah.
character to the other characters?
Yeah. Yeah. I like what you said about Tunde is trying to live his truth, but it's this tough thing that I think young black people often go through where like they think by clinging on to the majority, that's going to save you.
Mm,
Like, like the idea that whiteness and being adjacent to whiteness or as close as possible to it is going to save you. So his singular purpose is misguided um, within the film. And until he divorces himself from whiteness is when, I'm not going to ruin it, but is like when one is released, at least within the film, of certain forms of white domination. Um, so then, two, I think, in terms of Soren philosophically, what he's doing is he's clinging on to privilege. He's never been another. So like, so all everything that he's reaching for, whether that's sports, whether that's white women, whether that's like maintaining this thing, is that like as a privileged person is less likely to want to give up their privilege. So
Mhm.
his goal may seem sporadic, but like the intention behind it is singular as well. It's I'm trying to maintain my status quo, plain and simple.
Mhm.
And I and the question that's really being asked, within the relationship is, who is gonna let go? Will Soren let go of his status quo?
Mhm.
Will Tunde let go of the idea that whiteness will save him? Um, and that tension, despite love, despite like a really loving and I think true relationship, that is really the central tension within how they function together. And ultimately, I think their relationship issue.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I love I that tension is what made it so compelling, because usually when you see these types of stories, there's always someone who's greatly disadvantaged, usually the person of color, as they travel to find themselves economically as well as socially, emotionally, spiritually, whatever that journey is. But with this, with Tunde and with Soren, for all intents and purposes, Tunde is extremely privileged. He has a nuclear family, they are wealthy, he has access to things, but at the same time, because of his color, he is susceptible to police brutality, racial profiling, and all these things. Whereas Soren has the privilege of skin tone and society, but kind of has a kind of a broken aspect to his life as well. And it's compelling that these two characters met on this crash course to try to continue living in their parallel truths in a
right,
sense.
right. And I think too that like my reasoning to render Tunde as not disadvantaged was really important, because you're right. And oftentimes it's the socioeconomic status that people blame on why people are getting killed.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very conscious to remove that so that the focus is on, no, it's because you're black. It's because you're a POC. There is no other excuse here. There's like one singular thing that is like differentiating the way that this person is being treated, and it's the color of their skin. Um, and two, in terms of like the nuclear family, it's that black people have nuclear families. It's like
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes that's not showcased, and like there's this like concept that like every black person comes from a broken home, and like so like in my character renderings, I was like very conscious of like where the stereotype lies and how to upend it, because to showcase reality,
Mm-hmm.
to just to showcase that no, like people live this way. This is not some type of myth. The only things that we get to see are black people in lower,
Extremes,
yeah, in
super
extremes,
balling
yeah,
or
or
living in the hood.
yeah, people, there's a black middle class, and that's a real thing.
Mhm.
And people go to private school, and like and they still struggle with isolation and emotional violence, and in general, just like
I,
police
I,
violence.
I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Going back to the very beginning, before you even started shooting the film, what were those early drafts like for this story? Was
Right.
it always the tension between these two characters? What were those first pages like for you?
It's important. This is the funny thing is that I wrote the first draft when I was 19, and that's the thing that I won the competition on. I did not rewrite it from that point. Um, and so the way I approach work is my first drafts are often emotionally arced, like character stuff. So it is the same tension, 100% the same tension. The story is the same. The emotions are the same. The only thing that really changed was structurally allowing an audience in,
Mm,
opening it up so that any audience member can understand what is going on from like a literally from like a time loop structure perspective,
mm,
which so the process was to make the story more inviting. Um, but I feel like if a black person read the first draft, they'll completely get it. They're
mm,
like without, you know what I'm saying? But when one is trying to communicate, which is like the the nature of our medium is a communication medium. Like I said, like one has to really adhere and kind of play with genre in order to get that message across.
mhm.
Um, so yeah.
Before I was talking to you, I like to jump on Twitter and put in a film and just see what people are saying about it, the anticipation. And I've been seeing a lot of reaction videos from the LGBTQ community commending the trailer in its realness and its feeling. And just I've been seeing a lot of positive feedback about it being a portrayal of some very whole people instead of a monolith type of character that we see in other projects.
I'm not
When you
on Twitter.
tell us when you tell a story like this, or do you go and check those types of things, or do you once it's out there, that's it?
Yeah, I'm not on Twitter like ever. Like I don't have a Twitter. I
Don't
don't
do
think.
it.
Yeah, no. I think it's kind of like a. I'm not gonna diss Twitter because Twitter is its own beast, and I'm just gonna like
Mhm.
let that lie. Um, I think I used to. I think I used to be more concerned about critical reception and about like whether people liked me and like liked my work. And I think as I've aged, I kind of understand that once this stuff is out, it's not mine. It's simply not mine anymore. It's for audiences to attach to and feel the way they're gonna feel, get the lessons that they're gonna get, out of it. And so, more importantly than whether people like it or not, is that I'm really glad that people engage with the material. That makes me happy. I just want the movie to be watched. I want you to like if it gives you a reaction, then I'm good. Whether that's positive or negative is besides the point. Watch the movie, engage with the material, and I hope you get something out of it because those that get feel seen and feel less alone, I've done my job if I get one person. Truly. Because if one person can get this and say, dang, like this made me feel seen and this made me feel valid and this made me feel like a human being, that's enough for me. I'm good. You know? So yeah.
And lastly, speaking of that scene with the film being seen, who were the first people you showed the completed film to, and how did they react to you?
Oh wow, completed film. I mean, we had a lot of rough cut screenings and such and such. And more often than not, it was just like friends, and like friends and like industry friends because it was like I had my friends and then Ali had his friends and the producers had their friends and it was kind of an amalgamation of that, trying to interact with the work. My friends' reactions were really cool. I think people were really proud of me. I think I could not understand the weight of it at the time because this is really all I know. Like a majority of my adult experiences is this. You know what I mean? Um, but I found that people, particularly like non-black friends of mine, had a greater awareness of what it is to the traumatic nature of being black in America. There's one story of a friend of mine left the movie and we went to In-N-Out and he was for the first time aware of a police officer.
Mm,
Because that's a conscious thing that any black person is constantly aware. Okay, so that's an officer. I need to do X, Y, and Z because that's a point of danger. I'm in my business. And it was the first time that he had ever been aware of a police officer being in this way, like being in a space because he's very safe. When that happens. So it's little things like that. Um, those reactions matter to me a lot. Is hopefully you gain a greater awareness of what's happening with Black people. Yeah, I was
Absolutely.
glad that those were the reactions I was getting.
Excellent. Well, I thank you so much for your time. I truly enjoyed this film. It was so unique and just felt so whole. And I love the variety of storytelling methods and how we got to know these characters on their journey. Thank you for your time. And I hope I talk to you again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really
Take care.
appreciate
Bye bye.
Better shake your booties for black girl nerves. Better shake your booties for black girl nerves.